In this tutorial, we will go over the Scouting game mode, its objectives, common tactics, and recommended mech builds. Scouting is a 4 vs 4 game mode within faction warfare that is limited to a single drop of light or medium mechs. The goal of the attackers is to gather as many data points as possible from around the map and escape on their dropship, while the defenders would do everything in their power to stop them. The data points are represented on the map by spinning towers. Simply stand near one for a couple seconds in order to capture it for your team. A total of 20 data points spawn in each match randomly at 40 possible locations. After enough data is collected, a drop zone will appear on the map and a countdown timer will start. This occurs when the attackers get to 10 data, when the defenders get to 11 data, or all the defenders have been destroyed. After this initial timer, a dropship will appear for the attackers that hovers over the drop zone. It will remain there for just over a minute, providing covering fire for the attacking forces. The attackers must be standing within the square below the dropship when this secondary timer runs out in order to win. The main thing to understand about the fights within Scouting mode is that it will almost always come down to a brawl. This is due to the concept I like to call critical mass. This is when there are multiple opponents with enough weapons ready to fire that will either significantly damage or kill your mech if you expose yourself to them. The number of opponents required for them to have critical mass depends on their weight and loadouts, but it is very rare for your opponents to have critical mass with only 4 lights or mediums. This means that no real front line gets established between the two forces, and therefore fights turn into a brawl. Knowing this, we want to build our mechs such that they will perform well in that type of combat. The best weapon systems to take are SRMs, small-sized lasers, and large-caliber autocannons. These provide strong, short-range firepower to quickly put down your opponents. Weapon types to avoid are LRMs, larger lasers, small-caliber autocannons, and streak SRMs. These weapon types typically rely on the front line being established in order to deal damage over longer ranges and time periods. They simply do not have the stopping power or heat efficiency to be successful at short ranges. Special note here for streak SRMs is that while they are effective versus enemy lights, the damage is spread out far too much to be effective against enemy mediums, which are the main opponents you will run into in Scouting mode. Another thing to consider is that Scouting fights are over much faster than a regular match. This means you can take a little less ammo than normal and still last throughout the whole fight. Now that we have the basics of the game mode and we have built our mechs, let's talk about specific tactics. There are 2 main tactics for winning Scouting missions. Either win the fight or perform a smoke dive. Both of these strategies require a different group composition of brawlers and skirmishers. First, let's talk about winning the fight. For this strategy, your group will be focusing on killing the enemy forces. Your team should consist of mainly brawler-type designs, with the occasional skirmisher to act as a scout or assassin. Typically, you want to stay together as a team. Because of the smaller team size of only 4, having a single ally away from the fight will reduce your group's firepower by 25%. Also, if you split off, you may find yourself vastly outnumbered by enemy forces, leading to a quick death. While you do want to stick together, you also need to spread out and capture data strewn across the map. As such, you can spread out a bit, but try to stay within a map grid square of your allies. That way, if you get attacked, your allies can be there in just a few seconds. However, when contact is made with the enemy forces, immediately regroup with your allies and prepare for the brawl. When engaging into the brawl, focus your team's fire by calling primary targets. Dropping an enemy mech quickly will remove a large portion of their damage capability from the field, giving your team the upper hand. While it is slightly dishonorable, legging is the easiest way to kill the majority of lights and mediums. This is especially true for mechs such as the Centurion, as it has very good hitboxes for spreading damage across the torso, while having fairly thick and easy to hit legs. After the fight is won, the game will end immediately for defenders, while attackers will still need to make it to the dropship before the timer runs out. If you do not make it, you will lose even if all of the enemies are dead. Another thing to note here is the tactic of holding the dropship. If all the defending forces are dead and the dropship has arrived, the game will end immediately upon one allied mech entering the drop zone, no matter how much time is left. This means a single ally can stand just outside of the dropship and wait until the last few seconds before entering the drop zone and ending the game. This can give your allies another minute or so to scour the map for data. Now let's talk about the strategy of smoke diving. This is when you make a last-second run for the dropship, relatively ignoring the enemy forces. This only works on attack and relies on the game mechanics related to the timer and the dropship. In order to win, you only need to be standing within the drop zone at the precise time it reaches 0. It doesn't matter if you have been there for minutes or just a couple seconds. Your team should consist with as many skirmisher types as possible in order to have the highest mobility. Also, mechs equipped with ECM are very useful to hide your movements. For this tactic, you can either stick together as a team or break into smaller groups. The main focus is to capture as much data as possible and avoid the defenders at all cost. After the dropship comes in, your team is to take up various hiding spots near the drop zone and hold position. The goal now is to wait until the very last moment to make a run for the drop zone. In a perfect run, you should reach the drop zone with just a few seconds remaining on the clock. The enemy forces will be there trying to kill you, and every second you have to survive on the point diminishes your chances of winning. If you suspect the enemy of planning a smoke dive, sitting on the drop zone will do very little to defend against it. You have to intercept them on the way in and try to take them out before they reach their goal. Search out possible hiding locations and position yourself at a choke point or high ground that they are likely to pass during their run. Now that you have the knowledge required, get out there and scout for your faction. Thank you for watching this tutorial, and good hunting.